Hello, my name is Mike Bennett and I'm the creator, author and podcaster of Underwood and Flinch. And if you're watching this, then you've quite probably listened to both Underwood and Flinch and its sequel, Blood and Smoke, and are now at the point that you're considering continuing the adventure, and that has brought you here to this quite possibly unknown thing called Patreon. So what is it, and why should you sign up to support me on it? Can you trust it? And how does it work once you have signed up? These are some of the questions that I'm sure you're wondering about, so let's address them. What is it? Patreon is a site that makes it possible for fans of any given artist to support that artist in their artistic endeavours. It's a bit like Kickstarter, but with Patreon, instead of making a one-off contribution, you pay a small amount of money on an ongoing monthly basis. Why should you support me? Because you like Underwood and Flinch and you want it to continue. Am I right? Yeah! Well, that's what Patreon is doing. Quite simply, it, along with my most excellent patrons here, is enabling me to write and podcast the ongoing adventures of Underwood and Flinch. Before I started here at Patreon, I was at the point where I was ready to give up writing and podcasting and just put all my energies into my day job. I was halfway through Blood and Smoke, and though I had that and a whole canon of potential subsequent Underwood and Flinch stories mapped out in my mind, I just didn't have the time to do the necessary work on any of it anymore. But then Patreon happened. And since joining the site, thanks to my patrons, not only have I been able to finish Blood and Smoke and work my way deep into the ongoing Underwood and Flinch saga, but I've also recorded loads of stories by H.P. Lovecraft and others. I've written and recorded the podcast mini-series sequel to One Among the Sleepless, and my award-winning zombie apocalypse novella, After the Plague, and there's also my ongoing reading of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and there's Glitterballs too, which is nice. This is all kind of stuff in addition to what I like to think of as the main attraction of my Patreon page, and that is Underwood and Flinch Underground. At the time of me recording this, the story is 49 episodes long, bigger than the original Underwood and Flinch, and at the end of this month, it will celebrate its 50th episode. But what will I do when it finishes? What then? Well, I'll tell you what then. Thanks to my patrons here at Patreon, the Underwood and Flinch saga, because it is a saga now, will continue. Underground isn't the end. It's only one novel in what will ultimately become the epic saga of Underwood and Flinch. And how is all this possible? Because my patrons make it possible for me to make it happen. The next question, can you trust Patreon? Well, I do. In addition to being a creator here, I'm also a patron, a supporter of some other writer-podcasters on the site, and I have never had any problem whatsoever. Patreon is a totally legitimate business. They fund their business by taking a small percentage of what you pledge to me, so that's money that I don't get. But that's totally fair enough as far as I'm concerned, because what Patreon offers creators here is huge. The data storage, the content delivery mechanism, the messaging services, and all the rest of it. And there's a lot of the rest of it, let me tell you. There are no ads on Patreon. They don't stick annoying promotional junk on my podcasts or anything like that. But of course, they do have to pay their overheads, including, of course, their staff. And they do this, all of this, out of that small percentage of your pledge that they take from me, not you. And there are, by the way, no additional or hidden charges either. You pledge an amount and you pay that amount. Of course, some people say to me that they want all their pledge money to go to me. To them, I say, well, just pretend that it does. One way or another, I would still have to pay Patreon for what they provide me with here, just as I have to pay a podcasting company called Libsyn every month for them to host my public podcast. It's free to you, but I have to pay them to host my podcasts. So, it's all relative. One way or another, the company that's hosting and delivering the content needs to get paid, because they're also paying for the online storage that I'm using. It's fair enough, isn't it? And so I'm happy, my patrons are happy, and Patreon are happy. It's all good. Next question, how does it work once you're signed up? Well, As I said earlier, my Patreon is set up in such a way that patrons are charged on a monthly basis. Now, this happens at the start of every month. Also bear in mind that when you sign up, you'll automatically be charged for the month you sign up in. Now, you can pledge anything that you like per month over $1. I have some pledge levels set up, $1, $3, $5 and $10, but you can pledge, any amount between those figures or above them, should you wish. Now you can see what perks are associated with each level here on my Patreon page, just to the right of this video, or at least it is on my computer screen. But essentially, if you're here for the podcast audio of Underwood and Flinch Underground, then you will need to pledge at or above the $3 level. So what about the whole delivery mechanism, Mike? How do I get the podcasts? Okay, well now this is important. If you've only sort of half been paying attention so far, then wake up and pay attention to this. When you sign up, Patreon will send you an email with your own personal RSS code. Now, you may not know what that is, so I'll tell you. Your RSS code is the key to getting the podcasts into your phone or whatever it is that you use, so it's very important. All podcasts have an RSS code. It's kind of like a communication line between where the podcast is hosted, in this case that's Patreon, and the app in your phone. So, when you sign up, whatever email account you use to sign up to Patreon with will be sent an email from Patreon with your RSS code in it. Now, this will be your personal code. Every patron has one, and it operates for you only. You can't share it with anyone, and if you should stop supporting me, it won't work anymore. It's only for you, and only for as long as you're my patron. What you do when you receive it is to copy that RSS code into your podcast app, whatever you use to listen to any regular podcast with. And when you do that, bingo! All the podcasts that I've ever put out at your pledge level on Patreon will then appear in your app, and you can start listening or downloading them immediately, just as you would with any other podcast. But what do I do if I don't like it, Mike? What do I do if I want out? Well, fear not. You can cancel your pledge at any time, and if you want, you can also completely delete your Patreon account. It's not a life sentence, you're not locked into anything, you can stay as long as you like or leave whenever you want. But if I were you, I wouldn't completely delete your Patreon account, because if you should get the UNF itch again a little further down the line and you want to come back again, all you have to do is log into your Patreon account and renew your pledge to me, for as long as you want. And so, that's it. Patreon. It's not too difficult, and if you have any questions, you can always email me at themikebennett, all one word, at gmail.com, and I'll be very happy to answer them. But for now then, thank you for your attention, and I hope to speak to you again soon via the miracle of Patreon podcasts. But until then, it's farewell.